Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio as we continue to celebrate all the amazing people working across the state of Mississippi to make this such a great place to live, work, and play. Hey, we're going to be coming to the mayor of the city of Ocean Springs, Kenny Holloway, here in just a second. But before I do, I wanted to share a quote with you. Malcolm Gladwell, you may know him. He's a reporter for The New Yorker. And he's written several books. I'll remind you what those books are in just a second. But he worked for Advanced Condé Nast, the same company that I work for. And I remember I had just read The Tipping Point, one of the books that he wrote. And I mean, it's a book. If I were to describe the book, it's how little things that can really make a big difference. And the whole book is about sort of the science behind it. But I remember the first time that I was on an elevator at the World Trade Center, and Malcolm was on the elevator with me, and we spoke quickly, and I thought, man, I just passed this guy who I really enjoyed his reading. In fact, he wrote a wonderful book called The Outliers, and it got a lot of attention because that's where this whole notion of some research that had been done by others about the 10,000-hour rule. In other words, if you really put 10,000 hours into something, you can master it. You can achieve sort of world-class expertise on a skill. And, wrote a whole book about it, and it was called The Outliers. And there was another one called Blink. And this concept of thin slicing is what he talked about it. But he said just this little sliver of information, we can use that sliver of information to make decisions, and that oftentimes those decisions are right. Now, they can be wrong sometimes, but it was a whole book around this whole notion of thin slicing. It's called Blink. But what he once said this: it's those who lie outside ordinary experience who have the most to teach us. It's those who lie outside ordinary experience who had the most to teach us. And he spent a whole career trying to understand those folks that I guess you could call them outliers as well. But it's true, people who achieve things and do things and have thoughts about things that are beyond our wildest imagination, they have a lot to teach us. I often think about Elon Musk and what he's brought to the world. He's definitely one of those, and he certainly has a lot to teach. But Malcolm Gladwell, if you don't know of him, look him up. He's written a bunch of books, but The Tipping Point, Blink, and The Outliers were three of the better ones that I really enjoyed. Okay, now let's shift gears and move over to my friend, the mayor of the city of Ocean Springs, Kenny Holloway. Hey, first of all, Kenny, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Ricky. How are you?
I'm doing good. Listen, I gotta ask you before we get into any of the business of the city, and just ask you if you've been fishing lately.
I knew you were going to say that. Matter of fact, I did. I went to Chandelier. We took the Easy Ed out a couple of weeks ago. We had a great trip. Caught a lot of trout. We were just a little bit under our limit, but some of the nicest trout I've caught at Chandelier ever. Not fishing. Freemason. I mean, the trout were nice and big trout, and not many throwaways.
Yeah, of course, I've had a series of show both on the outdoor show, SuperTalk Outdoors on Mondays, and this show with charter boat captains. I love to check in with them. Guests coming in from all over the country, and the fishing has been absolutely incredible. We've had rain, thank goodness. Actually, some rain's good, especially in terms of how the fresh water and the brackish water in the rivers meet up with the salt water and what it does to the bait and shrimp and so on. The reports I'm getting have been just terrific.
The boat, the Easy Ed is our boat, and it's parked down by the Chandelier boats. We were slipped there. And Dean Gladney's got the beach water, and he told him, I said, Dean, I'm going to plan a trip in the middle of August. And he said, middle of August? He said, can't you pick a better time? I said, I got to go when I can go. But, as you well know, typically that's not a good month to catch a trout at Chandelier. They were there.
I had the opportunity last weekend. One of the great things about living on the water is you have the opportunity to just drop a boat and go if you've got a few minutes, And Jordan brought his, they come over and visit all the time, Jordan and his wife, Sierra, and the kids. and they set him down for a nap. And I heard Jordan in the fishing closet, I heard some rods rattling around, and he came out and he said, "Look, I'm going to go run some buoys and see if I can find a triple tail. You want to go with me?" I said, "Sure, man." So we left. I mean, it was like 1:30 or 2. We went for a couple of hours and came back, and we were in the pool within a couple of hours. And on the way back, I was saying, because it was beautiful weather, I said, "Where in the world can you do what we just did?" So we did this big loop all the way to Ship Island and back around to Horn Island, and checking, floating stuff. We caught a couple of lemon fish, and we caught a speckled trout actually next to a buoy in about 19 feet of water on the bottom. I mean, you just never know what you're going to catch when you're doing that. Lost a couple of good fish, but golly, man, we're so lucky to live here, aren't we?
We really are. I was walking, Susan and I were walking downtown a couple of months ago, and she said, "Oh, we're just so lucky to be able to live in Ocean Springs and be able to enjoy, downtown area." And, it's just, it's really a great spot. And all along the coast, everybody's got a little something different to offer, and that's what makes it work.
Well, as you have heard me say 1,000 times, and I'll say it again, what makes coastal Mississippi so wonderful? What makes coastal Mississippi paradise on earth is not just that we're a coastal community, and certainly that's a big part of it, but we're this collection of communities, each with its own unique sense of place. So whether you're in Biloxi or Ocean Springs or Moss Point or Pascagoula or going over to Long Beach and past Christian. I mean, I can name them all, but the fact is each have their own unique sense of place. Ocean Springs being one of the more unique places, the downtown. I mean, we'll get into some of this in just a second, but there's always going to be rub in any city. And I don't care which mayor I talk to, there's always a little bit of rub, a tension between, are we okay with where we are, or do we need a little bit more economic development? That's just always going to be the case. And the more success you have, the more you're going to have a little bit more rub. That's just that's the democratic process that's working. But when we think about economic development in the city of Ocean Springs, we think about often what's happening on government. And we'll come back to all of that here in just a second. But what we don't think about is the stuff that people don't necessarily see. And I had Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann on recently, and one of the very first things that he mentioned, because he had just been there to visit with American Bait Works at Ocean Springs. You were with him there, but he was impressed with what he saw there. And speaking of fishing, they're making just the right kind of baits. But it's cool to have something like American Bait Works doing their thing right there in Ocean Springs, isn't it?
It is. It was, first time I'd been in there, and it's really unique to see what they're doing and how they do it. And even they're getting more automated so they can produce more and more efficiently. And then, I don't know if he told you, but we also went to Superior Optical, which was right next door in Sunplex. And those folks are making, the best optical lenses, in the country, in the world. Right there in Ocean Springs. And it's amazing, that facility too. So a lot of things are going on, throughout the city. It's obviously government in Washington, that's the focal point. But there are a lot of development that's going on outside on Highway 90, to the east, which we have some issues there as far as growing pains there, as far as water and sewer and so forth. But it's all will be addressed in time.
Hey, the optical company that you're talking to, my brother-in-law and my sister live next door to them, and they're a multi-state company. They're doing incredible stuff. Man, again, entrepreneur. Listen, after Katrina, Haley Barbour often said the government's going to get you back on your knees, but as private enterprise, it's going to get you back on your feet. Right. And it takes a lot of entrepreneurs working together, doing amazing things to make a city thrive. Whether it's in the tourism and hospitality sector, or whether it's like this optical company and this bait company that we just mentioned. It takes all that happening. And at any given day, you there's no telling what kind of conversations you're going to be involved in as it relates to economic development. Is it, Kenny?
It's not, Ricky, and Ocean Springs is fortunate, that people want to invest in our city. And what we're trying to do, we're not out there soliciting these folks to come. They just show up and they've got ideas and they've got plans, and sometimes they're good plans and sometimes they're not. And but it's a fine line you walk. It really is.
Well, I remember back in the days when I was Sun Herald, and our readership, the newspaper readership of all of coastal Mississippi, the penetration of readership in Ocean Springs was greater than any other community. So this goes back 20, 30 years. Ocean Springs has always been a very educated and compassionate and passionate community when it comes to what they want to see. And so, all we've seen in social media is that's been enabled in a way so that the democratic process in Ocean Springs is always going to be alive and well. And when you're the mayor, you see that. We'll talk a little bit about some of that when we get back on the other side, when we continue our conversation with Mayor Kenny Holloway from the city of Ocean Springs. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I have my friend Kenny Holloway, the mayor of the city of Ocean Springs, and we'll get into some of sort of the challenges in the city, which are good challenges. Anytime you have economic development happening in the city, you got to find this. You got to let democracy work. You got to listen to the community and do what's best for the community in the long run. But we'll get there in just a second. I wanted to mention. We haven't talked since the Neshoba County Fair, and you went, and it was a really great opportunity. The Mississippi, so when people who have been to the Neshoba County Fair have talked about on the show, what you'll remember if you've been there before, if you've been there every year, then it's part of your family tradition. You probably have a cabin there and you enjoy it. But what you'll remember is the clay, the red clay, and the heat, because it is hot. I've been once. I can say that I experienced it, but beyond that, I wasn't really interested in going back. But if you have family there and it's part of your heritage, you can't wait to go back and see people. And of course, there's a big political element to it as well. But now there's actually a coastal aspect to it. Then DMR is involved with a bunch of sponsors involved. It's called the Clay and Sand Mixer. Right. And it's sand being Mississippi Gulf Coast. I think it's cool to actually bring a coastal element into the Neshoba County Fair. But you got to experience that, didn't you, Kenny?
Well, this is the third year in a row I've gone. And, we got involved with that sand and clay, that red clay mixer. And it's interesting. The DMR shows up and, I don't know, they cook like 40 gallons of oysters and, shrimp, boiled shrimp and flounder, fried flounder, and just, the line of people, they know it's there now. That Wednesday night, they're coming. And there's no telling how many people they fed, but it was a big, huge crowd. And Ricky, I don't know if it's ever been as hot that time I've been there as it was this past year. I mean, it was scorching hot. But you pull up, and Ricky Alderman went this year, and he said, "Man, I thought I'd come up here and there'd be a little fair and about 5 or 6 little houses around." And he drove in, and the cars parked, thousands of cars parked out there, covered with red clay. All these cabins and everything. It's unique. It's unique to Mississippi. It's unique to the country, I believe.
It really is, man. And look, were you amazed? The thing that amazed me about the Neshoba County Fair is how much money some people put into those cabins for just a once a year kind of deal.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and a lot of times they're just buying them, tearing them down, and spend a lot of money to buy it, to tear it down, to build a new cabin. But it's something to see.
Could you imagine if somebody were to, of course they have a lot of safety procedures because of the fire prevention and all that. But man, if that ever got going, that would be a tragedy.
It would be. There was some conversation about that, how they operate, how they, the electricity, the water involved, the sewer involved in it. It's a city, when that fair's in town for that 10 days, it's a city. It's a lot of folks and a lot of activity.
What I remember is how many people there knew each other. It was this huge reunion. Of course, I knew a lot of people there, but man, I not like the people that I was hanging with. I mean, they just like our friend Joe Cloyd. I remember Joe seeing Joe there. I mean, literally knew everybody. You know, all these folks who had been there year after year. I was there with Jim Prince, the newspaper guy, and as his guest. So I had a place to actually, I had to escape to that had air conditioning, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great celebration every year. The other thing I wanted to mention before we get into, you know, just basically how things are going in the city is we can never focus enough on firefighters and policemen in the city and how important they are. And I mean, you've always made that a big part of what you're doing as mayor to stay tuned in with those guys, and that's so important, isn't it?
It is. I've got a great relationship with the fire, the police, the public works. I see Ocean Springs and our city as, you know, and the city employees as one big family, and that's what we try to be. You know, you've heard me say this: if I'm the smartest guy in the room, we've got problems. So you know, we invest in our people. We are, you know, like every other city, we're competing against each other, and we're competing against the private sector to retain people and pay them, you know, what they deserve to be paid. And in the public, first responders and the fire and the police, there's an arms race going on in police right now. I mean, you know, everybody's elevating their pay. They're trying to stay ahead of everybody. And we just did our budget. And, you know, that's something we had to look at. You know, are we competitive? You know, because we can't hire a policeman or a fireman and put them through the training, and then all of a sudden, you know, neighboring city has increased their rate $1 an hour more, you know, and then that person leaves. And not only that, you know, with the state, you know, we're competing against the state, and you know, because they're paying their officers more, which, you know, they all deserve money to put their lives on the line every day, and they deserve every penny they get. But it's really it's an arms race right now in that area.
That's a great way to say it, actually. And then, you know, you're working to recruit new firefighters. Okay, you obviously you mentioned the utility side of what you do, the policemen, the amount of training that these folks have to go through. It never stops, really. I mean, it's a constant improvement, constant process to get everybody certified in so many different ways. And then if you're a policeman, you almost have to be a lawyer these days, because there's so many. It's not just how to stay safe, how to keep people safe, but it's also how to do it legally. And again, you can't just. You have to have an aptitude. You can't just hire anybody. People have to score a certain score and go through the process, and it's not easy. It's not easy going through all that, is it?
No, it's not. And, you know, it's something I've learned. Being the mayor, you know, the qualifications of a police officer, and they see things differently. They have to see things differently, you know, when they approach somebody, how they handle it, how they de-escalate the situation. You know, it's really the service that they provide that's you can't be measured, really.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Hey, listen, if you drive through the city these days, it's just pulsating with people that are enjoying visiting there. Every time I talk to Cynthia and the folks over at the Welcome Center and Tourism, the number of folks coming through continues to be high. It's interesting also to learn the number of people who may see signs or may see something about Ocean Springs and decide to turn off of I-10 and come pay a visit. But at any given time, whether it's day or night, there's something going on in the city. People, again, you're watching. When you go sit there, when you go to downtown and park and just go walk, what you see is success. This is what a walkable, successful community looks like. But as we were mentioning just a few minutes ago, that success and the fact that people are drawn to the city, and you see merchants doing well and restaurants doing well, it's only natural that people are going to want to continue to spend money, whether it's investing millions in boutique hotels or offices or hotels or more restaurants. I mean, there is always something going on in terms of prospective investments or already approved projects. Construction's underway on some big ones as we speak. But it literally is nonstop, isn't it?
It is, Ricky. This past week we had Art Walk. Woke up Saturday morning, it's storming. I'm thinking, man, it's going to kill the Art Walk. And I went to the lumber yard to get some stuff, project at the house, and I drove downtown, and people are all over the place. I mean, just walking around. And, I thought for sure the rain would kill the weekend, but talking to the business owners downtown, they had a great weekend, and we were talking about police and fire protection and stuff like that. We have a local tax that is 2% on food, beverage, and lodging. And that money can only be spent on tourism, public safety, and parks and recreation. So that 2% that we gather on these busy weekends, or we gather all the time, that goes back to the quality of life for our residents. We bought 2 brand new fire trucks this year. We bought police cars, and we're buying out equipment for these folks. And we're also invested in parks, So the tourism is a big industry for Ocean Springs, but the way it's structured, all that money goes right back into quality of life expenditures for the city.
Yeah, I remember in the early days of our conversation, when this is actually, you'd just been elected, you haven't even really hit the ground running yet. You knew going into this that there were some big things that you wanted to focus on. One is you wanted to continue to bolster tourism. 2, you had to be focused on infrastructure and all the requirements that, it's not, as you and I've discussed many times, it's not sexy, but it's got to be done. It costs tens of millions of dollars to do it. And hotels. The city just didn't have enough hotel rooms to serve the soccer and other things that were happening, the tourism industry. When we come back on the other side, we'll kind of break some of that down here a little bit and talk about how we're doing when we continue our conversation with Kenny Holloway, the mayor of Ocean Springs. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. I have my friend, the mayor of the city of Ocean Springs, Kenny Holloway. Kenny, I just had this flashback just now. It's when I'm trying to remember. It was not super long before the election. There was a mayor. I forgot what they called it, but I had the opportunity to moderate it, and it was you participated, and I hadn't seen you in a long time. All the mayors that were running for mayor, and I remember hearing you talk, and you you began to sort of detail some of the things I mentioned as we were going to the break. And I remember my impression was, "Ooh, Kenny might win this election," and of course you did. But you did. You had a strong sense of what you wanted to accomplish going in, and you kept it super simple. These are the things we need to be thinking about. And having been raised in Ocean Springs and now being the mayor of the city you grew up in, you've been pretty focused on those things from day one, haven't you?
Ricky, I think, there's examples everywhere, and I'm not going to name any examples, but if you look at some of the positive, the cities that are really doing well, they have a plan. And, and if you look at the cities that are not doing well and struggling, they don't have a plan. So it's important to have a plan and where the city should be heading, which, we've got a lot of things that are going on right now that were byproducts of, the previous administrations. And, we're having to manage those issues now, and they're good. I think they're good. But it's when you have a successful city like we do, you're going to have the naysayers. They're always out there. And I was listening. You had a show a couple of weeks ago, and y'all were talking about social media and how the industry has changed. The newspapers are gone, and you were a pioneer of, that transition. And it's a tough business right now being a politician because there's a lot of half truths and untruths out there. And, I don't have the time to stay on there and argue these points with these folks, that can stay on behind these keyboards. I think Billy Hughes calls them the keyboard warriors. So you just gotta stay focused on what you're doing. The results are the results. They're positive. The city of Ocean Springs has never been in a better financial situation than we are right now. I mean, ever. So, and we look back, previous board, the general fund balance at the city was like $260,000. Today our general fund balance is $3.5 million. So, we're doing something right. Now it's scary to a lot of folks. Growth is scary out there, but a lot of it we don't have complete control over. If somebody comes into town and they say, I'm going to buy this piece of property and I'm going to do this with it, and it's zoned for that, i.e. a hotel, then, all we can do at that point is, okay, if you're going to do this, and you want the city to bless it or to help with it or whatever, whether it's a TIF or a grant, you're going to have to do it the way we want it done. Because and I don't want to, degrade a development, but, there's a heck of a lot of difference between a Holiday Inn and a Hilton Curio hotel. Mm-hmm. So, a Holiday Inn, a box hotel, it's not going to fit in Ocean Springs unless it's out on the interstate somewhere. But if you're going to be, where the action is, and you're going to be downtown, you're going to have to do something that's unique, that's over the top. And that's what we are trying to accomplish. You tell somebody they can't do something, you can't build a hotel there, period, then you're in a lawsuit and you're going to lose that lawsuit. And it's going to cost you lots of money. So, I think that's something that the general public doesn't understand, or maybe some of them don't want to understand it. But, we can only do so much, but we try to be proactive with developers when they come and make sure that what they want to build, whether it's on the highway or it's downtown or it's on the beach, it fits with the plan and it fits in the community. It doesn't stick out,
So listen, what you're saying is so important, and I do believe you're right that the average person doesn't appreciate that it's not the city's not the one doing the developing, the developer's the one doing the developers, and there's zoning requirements and there's lots of there's rules that determine what can be done and what can't be done. And okay, so what the city is trying to do is make sure whatever development happens within the sense of place that Ocean Springs wants to project. And it could be design elements, it could be encouraging walkability, it could be lots of things like that. I didn't really have a great appreciation of this until after Katrina, when we hired Andreas Dwani, one of the greatest architects and planners in the world. I mean, he's the father of new urbanism, and I had the chance to work with him. And the irony was he goes to New Orleans and still had a connection with him in New Orleans afterwards. But he brought in 100 architects and planners from all around the world, and I got a chance to really learn that the success of a community is in not just zoning, but it's in the building codes and all these different, it's at a legal level that describe what a walkable community is. And if we follow these rules and requirements, we'll get the kind of community that we want. And you can't help but go to Ocean Springs and see the building that has occurred there. Highest and best use of land is going to happen, which means somebody may build a building, tear it down, build something more substantial. But the kind of building you want them to build that is more substantial is one that's kind of keeping in the character of the city. In fact, Andreas sent me a picture of something after Hurricane Katrina. I actually have it framed right over here. I can see it from where I'm sitting right now. And it literally just said a sense of place. And it's this beautiful picture of a downtown area where the buildings are related to one another, and there's a sense of it, and that's walkable, and you feel like you'll always remember that you were in that place. And what created that is complex rules that enabled that.
Right.
But as long as they're willing to follow those rules, you can't tell them they can't do it. I mean, they buy the property and they run with it. People have this sense that we need to keep it the way it is and we don't need to change anything. The greatest communities in the world, if they thought that way, they would have not become the greatest cities in the world. You understand that. And again, the other point that you make about trying to accomplish good things in a city, in the social media world, the keyboard warriors that Billy Hughes refers to. Gosh, it's hard, man. I managed major change efforts in the social media world, and it was absolutely brutal. But you gotta somehow keep your head above that noise and stay focused on what the city's obligations are. And so far, so good, really, in the scheme of things, wouldn't you say?
I think so. I think we've got, the right things going. I mean, somebody told me the other day, they said, Kenny, that's just not Ocean Springs. That big building downtown is not Ocean Springs. This hotel that's proposed is not Ocean Springs. And I know this lady, I grew up playing, in her yard with her son. And I said, ma'am, that metal building where they used to manufacture clothing, where this 1515 Government Street is being built, that was not Ocean Springs. This brownfield that was not Ocean Springs. The two buildings they tore down downtown, Keith Crosby and his wife are doing one, and Jordan and Field are doing the other one, Nico's. Those buildings were old wooden structures, and now they've taken those and transformed them into some really cool architectural designs, and it makes it kind of that, it's got that Louisiana flair to it. It's which I like. I like it. It's a little bit different, but it all comes together. And
it fits together. It so that when they're done, and you're walking down the sidewalk of Ocean Springs, what you will see will, for the most part, will blow you away, as opposed to what you saw before, which was, this is a part that hadn't found its highest and best use yet. And there's always going to be people who are going to fight highest and best use because they really glom on to what was. But you can't be a city advancing itself if you handle it that way. I mean, it's just success. Okay, so look, here's something that Andreas said. The one thing that this is Andreas Dwani, again, one of the top architects and planners in the world. What he said was, look at the Walmartization of Mississippi. And listen, I'll tell you what I'll do. We're at the end of the segment. I'll give you the punchline to that on the other side. And this is a really important lesson that I learned. And we'll see you after this break with Kenny Holloway, the mayor of Ocean Springs. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're meeting and having a great conversation with Kenny Holloway, the mayor of the city of Ocean Springs. When I went to break, though, I was mentioning that after Hurricane Katrina, 5 weeks after Katrina, we had the charrettes for all the cities destroyed in coastal Mississippi, had 100 architects and planners from around the world. The Knight Foundation paid $1 million toward that. Jim Barksdale paid $1 million. So we funded the whole effort, offered $2 million, private funds. And Andreas Dwani was hired, and it was just, we learned a lot. But one of the things he noticed was that we weren't proud enough as Mississippians. In other words, if we would get a Walmart, we were just happy to get the Walmart. It could be built however they wanted to, we get the big box and whatever. And he said, just look north and look in Madison. We've all driven through Madison north of Jackson. And you see, when they wanted Walmarts, they wanted them a specific type of way. When they wanted a Shell station, they're going to get it a certain kind of way. They wanted a shopping center, it was going to be built a certain kind of way. That's about raising the bar of expectation. Stop being proud that you're getting that, but work hand in glove with the developer to build something that's going to add to the sense of place of your community. And that's the point that he made. He said we needed to be prouder, that we were a diamond in the rough, that this community had a chance to get it right again. And Ocean Springs, being one of the few communities whose downtown area was not obliterated by Hurricane Katrina, had a chance to build off of this wonderful success that it had experienced before the storm. And so that's what you guys are facing. You're not just going to accept something because you're glad to have it, but you're going to bring developers in that understand that when they engage their architect with your people and your departments that help with building, that you're going to build something that the city can be proud of. And there's nothing happening in the city right now that you're not proud of, is there, Kenny?
No, I think everything that's going on right now is first class. You talk about the charrettes, and there's a few things a few pieces of property that's discussion going on right now. And if you look back at the charrettes, it pretty much mirrors exactly what's being talked about as far as development on those pieces of property. So it was what, 19 years ago. It'll be 20 years next year.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of funny how those things are, starting to come around and starting to happen. Things that we talked about, 18 years ago, 19 years ago.
Isn't it something you may think? One great example, the marina in Bay St. Louis, the thought that, you could have a marina. Oh, no, there's no way we'll ever do that. And then, of course, now it's part of the beauty of Bay St. Louis, the marina that they built. So you just never know, man. You never know. I mean, sometimes it takes a while. You plant a seed and you never know what's going to come from it. Someone posted you may have seen this on social media, the giant redwood trees, the absolute giant redwood trees. Someone posted a picture of one of the seeds from it. These tiny, tiny little seed. You plant that and it becomes, you never know what you plant in the area of growth and community enhancement. You never know what that's going to grow into. Right. But it's happening in the city. And it's exciting, and there's always going to be rub. I mean, again, that's part of what makes Ocean Springs dynamic. A lot of educated, engaged, passionate people. And then, again, social media adds another level of angst to the whole thing. But at the end of the day, this is just part of governing today, isn't it?
It is. We did the State of the City. I did the State of the City back in April. And I found this book someone gave me, and it talked about the first years of Ocean Springs as an incorporation. And it was 200 years ago. And it goes back and it talks about the growth of Ocean Springs, of where it started. It was always tourism. We had the springs. We had the Front Beach Hotel. And it talked about one of the growth spurts that was when the steamboats were there. That brought people to Ocean Springs. And then another one, it's kind of declined a little bit. And then the railroad came through. And that got another growth spurt going. And I just think Ocean Springs right now is just experiencing one of those growth spurts, that we've experienced at different times. We experienced one right after Katrina because, it was, Ocean Springs was the only place that you could go to get a meal, And really, that's what kicked off the whole downtown area. If it wasn't for Katrina, probably would be a lot different than it is right now. But you've got some assets that you just cannot duplicate. You cannot duplicate these oak trees. You can't go out and buy those things, and that's why we're so, cruising the coast. It's one of the best venues on the coast because they like to bring their cars down here, park under the oak trees, walk around the restaurants, the shops. So, you can't duplicate that. And, the goal, the board and myself is to not mess downtown up. There's three things that make the Ocean Springs work. It's the downtown, it's the school district, and it's our medical community, and those are kind of the three sacred cows that you have to take care of.
When you add to that a great fire department and police department, utilities, as we discussed, when you add to that a real capital improvement plan as it relates to the infrastructure, the non-sexy aspect of what you guys are doing, and you really position the city for great success. And that's a great story.
We're running out of time here, but I just want to say, when I travel around and I talk to different mayors, MML or whatever, I mean, people just love Ocean Springs. And
they do.
We kind of joke about it when we go somewhere. Everybody just gushing. We just love Ocean Springs so much, But
I don't blame them. I love it too. It's a great city. Hey, listen, Kenny Holloway, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you, my friend.
Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate you.
You bet. Hey, listen, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.